Sui Ishida's Tokyo Ghoul is one of the most acclaimed and renowned works of seinen manga in publication. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the anime due to the infamous adaptation that changed way too many things. The fact that it was adapted by a studio that mostly works on battle shonen didn't help. However, this does not take away from the brilliance of the original story at all. Although Ken Kaneki acts as the main character, Rize Kamishiro takes the cake for being the driving force behind the events that unfold across the story. But who is Rize Kamishiro and why is she so crucial to the plot? This is exactly what we're going to take a deep dive into. She tries to kill the protagonist in the first episode and becomes a part of him instead. Rize's introduction to Tokyo Ghoul. The story presents the city of Tokyo with a visible hierarchy within the food pyramid. While humans are considered to be the ones at the top of the food chain, at least in the real world, they find themselves as the prey in Tokyo Ghoul. Meanwhile, the top spot of the food pyramid is home to the predators who are known as ghouls. The ghouls feed on humans, but not so much because they're the preferred meat over the likes of beef or pork, but more because human meat is what's edible to ghouls. The world of the ghouls can be complicated to say the least, although they superficially come off as monsters interested in manslaughter. We get a deeper insight into this world after the protagonist Ken Kaneki steps into the shoes of a ghoul. Vampire stories have often depicted the transformation of humans after being bitten by vampires. The same can be said for werewolves and zombies. But ghouls are born the way they are, barring Kaneki, whose experience is much different. To understand his situation better, we will have to start off with the very first chapter of Sui Ishida's manga, and it all comes down to a date gone horribly wrong. We see a 20-year-old Ken Kaneki sitting in a coffee shop known as Anteku with his best friend Hide. While Hide comes off as an extrovert, Kaneki is presented as a quiet introvert who is into reading books, specifically the novels by his favorite author, by Takatsuki Sen. Meanwhile, the television news channel at the cafe reports the ongoing manslaughter of humans at the hands of ghouls across the wards of Tokyo. But that's not important. What's important is that Kaneki has a crush, and Hide wants to know who it is. As fans would have it, the girl Kaneki is into walks into the coffee shop soon after, leaving the protagonist love-struck. Hide thinks that she is too out of Kaneki's league, but he leaves the cafe nonetheless to allow his friend to have a shot. Kaneki observes the girl from afar as he blushes. He talks about how she smiles slightly every time their eyes meet, but there's a bigger reason for his attraction, which goes beyond her gorgeous appearance. The girl seems to like the same author as Kaneki as he spots her with the book he himself is reading, The Egg of the Black Goat by Takatsuki Sen. The story of the novel is about the son of a cold-blooded female serial killer who is referred to as the Black Goat. Although the boy does not want to become like his mother, considering her condition makes him sick to the stomach, he is left with no choice but to acknowledge the rise of the same desires that grow within him. The plot of the book is important as it foreshadows what is about to come for Kaneki. Fortunately, Rize walks past him right at that time and accidentally knocks the book off. She notices that Kaneki is reading the same book as she is, and an awkward conversation between the two of them takes place. Although short-lived, the results fare well for Kaneki, who gets a date with his crush. He later reveals the details to Hide when we get to learn the name of the girl is Rize Kamishiro. Kaneki is too excited about his date with Rize, which they are going to spend at his favorite bookstore. He spends his night thinking about what to wear and being lovelorn while the television news continues to report more ghoul attacks of a similar nature, suggesting that the same ghoul might be behind it all. On the day of the date, things go very well for Kaneki, as he has a great time with Rize. While she orders a sandwich, Kaneki notices that she only eats one bite. He grows slightly concerned when she reveals that she is barely eating because she's on a diet. As she says that, she excuses herself to go to the washroom while Kaneki brushes it off as just something women do, considering lots of women go on strict diets despite not having the need to do so. Following the bookstore date, they walk together and discuss the fact that they have the same blood type. This is a common thing in Japanese culture, as many people tend to believe that blood types influence personalities. So two people having the same blood type indicates that they are compatible on a personal level. While Rize and Kaneki walk, they are spotted by the waitress Tuka from Anteku as Rize takes Kaneki to a more secluded street. Rize confesses to living in a dangerous area which has recently been the hub for ghoul attacks. Afraid of the dangers, she expresses her concerns to Kaneki, who decides to escort Rize back home as the two of them have a great time talking to each other. With no one around them, Rize decides to make her move as she intensifies her flirting. She gets closer to Kaneki and buries her head near his shoulders, which flusters the wits out of him. She says that she notices the way he has been looking at her. Soon she bites him as her Kakugan or ghoul eyes activate and confesses that she has been watching him too, evidently for very different reasons. While Kaneki falls, Rize mentions her favorite part from the egg of the black goat. She says, "There's a scene I really like in the egg of the black goat. It's the one where the black goat rips out the guts of a man trying to run away. No matter how many times I read that part, it gets me so excited." She confesses to being a ghoul while her kagune activates. The kagune is the ghoul's predatory organ, which does the work of its claws and weapons, making it suitable for hunting and fighting. The terrified Kaneki tries to run away, but Rize grabs him using one of the tentacles from her kagune, promising to gouge his insides out gently. He runs away and realizes how all of her moves with her asking him out on a date have been calculated from the start. But once again, Rize knocks him to a wall with her kagune. She exclaims how she likes his body with its perfect amount of meat. The lack of excessive muscles only means that his meat is tender, making him much more delectable than the other two she ate the same week. This also lets us know that the ghoul attacks in the news were the works of Rize. However, something doesn't feel right, as steel beams from a construction site soon fall on Rize from above, while one of her tentacles remains latched inside Kaneki. As he passes out, Rize seemingly dies, and the both of them are rushed to the hospital. An operation is performed on Kaneki due to his extensive abdominal injury from the attack, resulting in him getting an organ transplant. Unable to contact the families of both Kaneki and Rize, the doctors transplant Rize's organ into Kaneki. Works out with both of them having the same blood type. While Kaneki barely hears the words being spoken within his subconscious mind, a naked Rize swims up to him from behind and grabs his body, covering his eyes with her hands. In his mind, Kaneki speaks to himself and says, "I'm not the protagonist of a book or anything, I'm just a normal college student who likes to read. But if I were to write a book with me as the main character, it would be a tragedy." His pulse stabilizes as the operation ends up being successful, and when he opens his eyes, one of them boasts the Kakugan, which is the same eye as the ones owned by Rize. The incident ends with Kaneki turning into a half-human, half-ghoul. He hated the food in the Kano General Hospital after his consultation with Dr. Kano, but brushed it off as the side effects of the operation and situation. He is soon discharged, but his problems persist as everything continues to taste disgusting to him. The food, including his favorite hamburger, mimics the taste one would expect from petrol and slime, forcing Kaneki to barf after eating anything. The only time he gulps with the promise of taste is when he interacts with a young girl. From the news, he soon learns about the eating habits of the ghouls, as the reporter talks about how ghouls have no choice but to eat humans, specifically because their tongues and taste buds are quite different, making human food taste disgusting and slimy to them, resulting in the urge to vomit. Although they can make do with a dead body or two for a month, certain ghouls slaughter for mere pleasure, like the infamous Binge eater, whose work was what was being covered in those news reports we mentioned earlier. It is evident that the ghoul being ridiculed for her binge eating tendencies in this situation is Rize. Distraught over the revelations of the news, Kaneki goes out to the streets. Famished without food because everything in his fridge tastes like garbage to him, Kaneki's hunger gets worse and worse. He observes the people walking across the street and begins to salivate while fantasizing about food. Soon he meets with Tuka, who is also revealed to be a ghoul, as she kills a man and offers his arm to Kaneki. As someone who has always been human, Kaneki struggles with the change in physiology. He is absolutely against consuming human flesh, much to Tuka's displeasure. Soon the manager of Ateku, Yoshimura, appears to help Kaneki. He is made to be part of the cafe, which is revealed to be a ghoul-run coffee shop that is dedicated to helping ghouls out. As a matter of fact, coffee tastes good to ghouls. However, it's not a substitute for food, which Kaneki does not take lightly, as he never wants to eat human flesh, unlike the woman whose organs turned him into a ghoul. And Taiku often sells human meat to ghouls by curating them from suicide spots instead of murdering people, proving that not all ghouls are dedicated to manslaughter. In fact, we already know that it's only some ghouls who go around killing people for personal amusement, like Rize. Within the network of the ghouls, each ghoul has a different name, with Rize being known as the Binge Eater, as we told you a few minutes ago. It is evidently revealed that not only was Rize hated by the people, but she was also hated by ghouls due to her tendency to binge eat and slaughter people, even attacking wards that were the turfs belonging to other ghouls. What made things even more dangerous was the fact that Rize was apparently a lot stronger than the average ghoul. She is later revealed to be the daughter of Tsuniyoshi Washu, who was the chairman of the Commission of Counter Ghouls, or the CCG, which is like the police force dedicated to eliminating ghouls. As a ghoul, she was renowned for her offensive kagune, which is referred to as the rinkaku. Kagunes are generally of 4 types, with the ukaku sprouting from the upper body or around the shoulders, the kokaku coming out from below the shoulders, the rinkaku from the abdomen, and the bikaku and the baikaku from the tail region. Each kagune was stronger than the one above it and weaker compared to the one below it. So Rize's kagune would fare well in battle against someone with an ukaku or a kokaku, but it could be defeated by a baikaku kagune. This particular kagune gave her accelerated health prowess, so much so that she could regenerate. This ability was passed down to Kaneki, as the organ transplanted from Rize to Kaneki was the sac-like kakuho. This organ stored or C cells, the amount of which which was remarkably high for ghouls compared with humans. Nutrients consumed from the human body would allow the production for more RC cells, making ghouls capable of sprouting their kagunes from that area. And with Rize being objectively stronger than most other ghouls due to her binge eating habits and kagune, she was a threat to other ghouls. Because ghouls tried to blend into human society, Rize's actions put their safety in jeopardy by drawing too much attention towards them. What made it worse is that Rize only went on a killing and eating spree for her personal amusement. She is the reason Kaneki embraces his new life as a half-ghoul, kind of. Rize's role in Kaneki's descent into madness. Rize was not the only crazy ghoul obsessed with eating on the block, which became evident after the weird Shu Tsukiyama, also known as the gourmet or bishoku in Japanese, arrived in the 20th ward. For reference, the 20th ward was the one with Anteku and by extension, most of the main ghouls within the story. While Rize was obsessed with binge eating as a whole, Gourmet was obsessed with the tastes and the experience of eating. This was bad news for Kaneki because of two reasons. One is that cannibalism is not uncommon among ghouls. The second reason is Kaneki's strange nature as a hybrid, which was a very unusual thing. Tsukiyama seeks out Kaneki and tries to bring up Takatsuki Sen's book Monochrome Rainbow to get his attention. With the trick working, he invites Kaneki to a cafe that the author would supposedly visit. Gourmet also reveals how he got into Takatsuki Sen because of Rize. Later, Gourmet takes Kaneki to a bar where he learns of a new conspiracy theory from a man named Itori. Itori confesses how it is believed that Rize's death was orchestrated because a person apparently stood on the building that the steel beams fell from. Later, Tsukiyama manages to injure Kaneki with a small glass wound, which comes off as a small mistake at first, until Tsukiyama cleans the blood with his handkerchief and later smells it lustfully, hoping to consume Kaneki due to his unnatural physiology. Under the guise of taking Kaneki to Rize's favorite food place, he is taken to a building where gluttonous ghouls bet on him to eat him. However, Kaneki manages to save himself, and also reveals his one-eyed Kakugan, which piques the interest around him even more. But this is because a one-eyed ghoul seems to be a legendary figure within the ghoul circuit, and many people consider that Kaneki is the one due to his nature as the one-eyed ghoul. Later, Kaneki learns of a terrorist ghoul organization known as the Aogiri Tree, which he soon falls victim to, all while a war between the CCG and the ghouls brews outside the facility. Although Kaneki tries to escape with several other ghouls, they end up getting caught, and in order to save a mother and daughter duo, Kaneki sacrifices himself and is captured, only for him to be put in the worst possible situation of his life. Kaneki soon becomes a victim to a man named Yamori, formerly known as Jason. A ghoul obsessed with torturing others at first, he brings Kaneki to a room with checkered floors and a soul chair where Yamori shows Kaneki his previous victim, a subordinate who didn't obey his orders. The ghoul sat there dead with a bucket full of dismembered fingertips in front of the chair. Yamori soon reveals an injection created by the CCG to counter a ghoul's resilience. This RC cell suppressant is notably known for reducing a ghoul's resilience, making it similar to that of a human body and allowing it even to be cut by a scalpel. And although pins and needles cannot penetrate a ghoul's body, they can penetrate the mucous membrane. As Yamori says that, he injects the RC suppressant into the inner corner of Kaneki's eyes. Yamori soon produces his pliers and pincers and begins torturing Kaneki for his personal amusement. Our protagonist lost so many fingers and toes to Jason's insanity that it's hard to keep track of them in this video. He even made Kaneki constantly count down from 1000 by 7s, meaning that Kaneki had to subtract 7 after each number. Because it required more consciousness than regular countdown, the exercise would keep Kaneki alert, making him awake to the torture instead of passing out and not feeling the pain. The moment he would regenerate and begin to regain his strength, Yamori would eject the suppressant into his eyes once again to repeat the cycle over and over, so much so that Kaneki wanted to die. He felt especially horrible about the fact that he was not even being tortured for information. He was being made to go through hell for absolutely no reason. Kaneki began to feel the urge to kill around this time while Yamori revealed his personal backstory. He used to be tortured by an investigator before he turned the tables and began to enjoy the process. He soon mentioned how Kaneki was a better specimen than others because Rize's Kagune is special, allowing extraordinary regenerative ability. It had 6 tentacle claws that could effortlessly take down multiple ghouls or humans at once. In fact, Dr. Kanu intentionally turned him into a hybrid ghoul because he was harvesting Rize's abilities to make several ghouls. Soon Yamori decided to step up his game as he took out a 20cm long red Chinese centipede. He then put it inside Kaneki's left ear, who like Yamori also began to laugh like a maniac soon after. Although he craved to be killed, Rize soon appeared in his subconscious mind and the two of them took a trip down memory lane. Kaneki spoke about his father dying early, leaving him and his mother alone. To support the family, his mother would work day and night over and over, and despite the miserable life, she would still encourage Kaneki to be the person who suffered for others instead of being the one who suffered. Naturally, a soul like Rize thought that that was a horrible philosophy to have. Things got worse when Kaneki's aunt began to rely rely on his mother, often asking her for money for little things. This led to his mother working more for her sister. In fact, she never rested. She even worked at home without complaining at all until she died due to overworking. He was then adopted by the same aunt, who began to resent Kaneki for being better than her own son. Soon, dinner turned into scrap money left on the table for Kaneki to fetch for himself, leaving him all alone, at least until he found Hide and the ones at Anteku whose lives were in danger at present. After leaving him to stew in his despair for a while, Yamori returned to his workshop with the mother and daughter duo who Kaneki tried to save. Considering how his extraordinary philosophy kept him going, Yamori decided to mess with him mentally as he asked Kaneki to choose between saving either one of them. With the mother ghoul asking him to save her child, Kaneki couldn't bring himself to choose. He couldn't let the child die in front of the mother, and he couldn't let the mother die in front of the child. However, Yamori kills both of them. After he leaves, Kaneki is once again left with Rize, who confesses to being a figment of his imagination. She mentions how it's his fault and how laughable it is of him to cling to a dead person for support. She says that it's not his bad luck, but the culmination of incidents due to his lack of ability to do something. He is in this position because he's an idiot who got tricked by Rize and tampered by the doctor. She goes on to bring up how his dead mother had said that it was better for him to be hurt than to hurt. If Kaneki had killed Yamori, the mother and child would continue to live on. If Kaneki's mother had refused to help her sister, she would still be alive. It was her weakness that stopped her from choosing her son over her sister. She chose both and lost both. Soon, Kaneki begins to scream about how he wants his mom to live for him, even if it means that his aunt would have died. Rize's words began to get to him more and more and more after she tells him how Yamori treats lives too carelessly, and the organization he is part of is on the verge of taking Kaneki's new close ones away from him. Naturally, he has to fight. He can't forgive the ones threatening his peace. He resolves to control the power of his Kagune and soon lets go of his innocence as he bites Rize, discarding his mother's kindness for Rize's ruthlessness and strength. And finally, after hating himself for being a ghoul, Kaneki rips through his skin with his fingers blackened from blood. The torture results in a physical transformation alongside a psychological one, leaving Kaneki with white hair. When Yamori returns, he turns the tables on his torturer like Jason had done with his torturer, refusing to show any mercy, and having adopted Yamori's knack for cracking his fingers, Kaneki defeats the ghoul with the same torture techniques that he had been subjected to for so long. Ultimately, Kaneki defeats him, and Yamori's Kagune unleashed, he starts to cannibalize on him, consuming his Kagune. Although ghouls taste like rotten fish to other ghouls, cannibalism results in acquiring tremendous strength. The moment acts as a metamorphosis that is the greatest turning point in Kaneki's life, and although Rize might not have been physically present here, she continues to live with Kaneki, despite claiming to be a figment of his imagination. She herself confirms this in a future arc, which we will eventually get into. Her story was a central part of Kaneki's journey and the existence of ghouls, but you wouldn't know that from the shows. The thing about Tokyo Ghoul is that it's one of the most infamous manga to anime adaptations in the history of anime. Generally, stories like Tokyo Ghoul tend to get great adaptations. Its action-packed nature also means that it gets a higher budget because action anime is generally more likely to break into the mainstream compared to the slice of life anime. And although the adaptation was handled by a big budget production house like Studio Pierrot, which is known for working on Naruto and Bleach, the Tokyo Ghoul anime was a mess. For starters, they crammed around 60 chapters into the first season, which has only 12 episodes. This means that they've left out way too many things, including key plots that were replaced with non-canonical stuff. A lot of artwork was also allegedly butchered, which is quite true considering Sui Ishida's darker art style was mellowed out. The I am a ghoul moment following the torture in particular was very dark in the manga since Kaneki was ripping his own skin off. The anime just showed a momentary transition from black hair to white hair, which was flowing with the wind, while Kaneki calmly mentioned that he was a ghoul. It took out all the sauce from the recipe. On the brighter side, the first season may be quite enjoyable for those who've never read the anime and don't have many expectations. The show is especially famous for its incredible opening song Unravel by Tori Kitajima. This brings us to the second season of the show, Tokyo Ghoul Route A, which is an original story with events that never happened in the manga. The mangaka himself wrote the story before releasing the sequel, Tokyo Ghoul Re. Although the major plot points continue to be the same, the change in smaller narratives created a ripple effect within the story, which managed to change everything. As such, the continuity for the show was messed up for the upcoming seasons because the anime from Tokyo Ghoul Re directly adapted the first manga. So it was impossible for the anime to continue properly in the same direction as the backstories diverged from the first episode of season 2, making the third and fourth seasons even more infamous than the first two. A notable confusion came with Rize's character because in the first manga for Tokyo Ghoul, she'd already appeared during the later arcs and not as a subconscious piece of imagination. She was revealed to be alive as she was being used by Dr. Kanu in his secret lab to create other ghouls. In the anime, she would appear from time to time in the beginning when Kaneki would not eat human flesh despite having hunger fits, as she would taunt him for going against who he had become. Although it was a great addition, it was necessary for the anime to adapt her existing story before adding fluff content. So when she appeared in Tokyo Ghoul, her fate within the anime did not make any sense until a long time after the fact. While the Tokyo Ghoul anime followed the Cochlea raid, the manga had Kaneki invading Dr. Kanu's lab and learning about his unethical experiments with one-eyed ghouls and finding out that Rize was alive. Kaneki then went on to eat other ghouls during the fight because he had already resorted to cannibalism for his nutrition. This arc was notable for showing him with his new kakuja that resembled a centipede. This kakuja is mostly a transformed kagune that covers the ghoul's body, making them stronger. In the anime, Rize's fate with her being alive and harvested for her kakuho was only implied towards the end, making the moment hard for people to understand unless they already knew the story. So with the manga details in mind, let's jump into what happened to Rize in the Tokyo Ghoul manga, which kicks off after a time skip. She is the core of the dragon and lies at the heart of every nefarious plot in Tokyo Ghoul, Rize's past and how it shaped her future. In the sequel, Kaneki goes by the name Heize Sasaki 2 years following the events of Dr. Kanu's lab raid. He leads the Quince 6 in the CCG, which is a group full of human ghoul hybrids dedicated to fighting ghouls. This manga also revealed Rize's past life prior to her date with Kaneki and her becoming a binge eater. She is born in Sunlit Garden as an illegitimate child to Tsukiyoshi Washu, who we already know as the chairman of the CCG. She was bred to become a womb that would preserve her family's bloodline, which made her hate her fate. Being illegitimate also meant that her family didn't give her the best treatment. After she escaped the Sunlit Garden with some help from Saito Washu Furuta, she was left hungry and in dire exhaustion. She was later taken in and adopted by the former leader of the 6th Ward ghouls, Rize Kamishiro, leading her to acquire her name as Rize Kamishiro. Her appetites only got worse with age as she started to binge eat against the orders of her surrogate father, drawing attention to her actions. Ultimately, the CCG caught wind of the events and raided the 6th Ward, resulting in Sashi getting captured. Left without her only real family member, Rize lived as a nomad from ward to ward, binge eating like a maniac wherever she went. She then moved to the 11th Ward, where history repeated itself with the CCG investigators raiding the ward after constant reports from her killing. Before leaving, she killed the leader of the ward, Haji, and because she was bored of the 11th Ward, she relocated to the 20th Ward, which is the one with Kaneki and the Enteku staff. Everywhere Rize went, she made an enemy out of other ghouls because her actions put everybody at risk. She had made a meal out of a love interest prior to Kaneki as well, and her murders had become popular across the media. A tenant in her apartment even commented about the foul smell from her room to the landlady. She would always hunt from the feeding grounds used by other ghouls and kill them when countered. Her enormous strength also meant that no one wanted to cross her. She went on to enjoy her time at the 20th Ward, where humans tasted great to her, and one day she saw a young boy who looked delicious. When she noticed that he would blush around her, she knew exactly what to do next. Needless to say, this boy was Ken Kaneki. For a very long time, Kaneki thought that Rize truly died that night, but he was wrong. She appeared once again at Kanu's lab, where she was present in a tank which was being used by the doctor. The predator was now prey due to the very thing that made her strong. However, she was soon rescued by Renju Yomo, who was the right-hand man of Yoshimura, the manager at Anteku. Renji keeps Rize in a container within his living space, where she had been kept in a state of starvation while being restrained by chains. She was fed enough so that she would survive, but it was never enough for her to regain her full strength. This situation resulted in her mind being unsettled. So when Kaneki found her and revealed that despite everything, he would never bring himself to hate her because he was part of her, she couldn't recognize anything or anyone. Within Kaneki's imagination, she also went on to become a monstrous construct who tried to eat him. Later, her surrogate father, Shachi, convinced Yoshimura to get rid of Rize, which led to her recovery eventually. However, she was found by her relative Kishimura/Soto Washu, the main antagonist of the manga, from the CCG, who kept her captured in a tank in order to harvest her kakuao for creating one-eyed ghouls, or ogai. Basically, history repeated and Rize just experienced a change of management. In the final arc of Tokyo Ghoul, Kaneki's cannibalism of the ogai led him to transforming into an ever-growing mass of flesh that consumed everything in its path. This was also known as his dragon form, where he began to have hallucinations of Rize calling him a murderer. She mentioned how he tried to create peace among humans and ghouls and then ended up risking the lives of his friends, implying how he tried to work for the greater good and ruined his own people in the process. Kaneki went on to admit that he just wished to be wanted, which was evidently a selfish demand, so much so that it made made Rize the wish she had never met Kaneki. Of course, she never truly said this, and it was Kaneki's own mind attacking his decisions, considering the fact that Rize was just his hallucinations. Ultimately, Kaneki was freed from the dragon form, revealing an egg-like structure of flesh that burst out from the Kakuja. It revealed Rize with hair white as snow. Following the battle between Kaneki and Kishimura Washu, or Furuta, Kaneki emerged victorious and reached the core of the dragon's body. He fought Rize's Kagune as she merged with the dragon, and he brought her misery to an end by killing her with a strike. While he did it, a tear rolled down his cheek, but the dragon's remains began to swallow him whole, bringing him into a darkness. As Kaneki was merging with Rize once again, she finally revealed how she had always been watching over him before passing away, as his friends managed to rescue him for good this time. Marvelous verdict. Tokyo Ghoul starts off as a story about ghouls eating humans. Make no mistake, Rize was a natural predator and Kaneki was delicious prey to him, nothing more. She becomes much more when she dies and becomes a part of Kaneki as we see him trying to navigate this new life. One thing leads to another and you see how stories of the two characters intertwine, as one cannot exist without the other. While Kaneki acts as a character driven by the plot, Rize, despite being dormant, is the character whose nature drives the plot. Kaneki's story begins with Rize and it ends with Rize. With that, today's video comes to an end. So what did you think of her? Do you enjoy this character? Did you enjoy this video? If yes, then don't forget to comment below and give this video a like. Till then, goodbye and have a good one.